There's a lot of different reverb plugins on the market. Which do I think are actually worth your time and money, and which do I think you could probably skip? I want to do a video where I tier list 25 different reverbs and explain what I like about them, what I might not like about them, how I like to use each one in my workflow, and kind of give you a little bit more information because there are just way too many to choose from on the market. So we're going to dive in and do all of that in 1 second, but before we do, my name is Austin, you're watching Make Pop Music. If you like this video, please make sure that you subscribe. We do these every single Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. If you want to leave a comment down below within the first 72 hours, you could be entered to win any sample pack, preset pack, MIDI pack, or loop pack from our website, Make Pop Music. We give you 3 days from the time that the video is posted, and we announce our winners the following week on our Instagram. So go ahead and leave a comment, go ahead and leave a like. It helps us out a ton. And if you want to support our channel, check out our website, makepopmusic.com. We have tons of freebies. We also have sample packs, preset packs, loop packs, MIDI packs, courses, tons of really, really cool stuff, and other content to kind of supplement the channel. Let's go ahead and let's dive in so we can rank these. We have 25 to dive into. The first one on our list is Abbey Road Chambers. So you're going to find that there's a lot of different versions of reverb on here. We're going to have spring reverbs, chamber reverbs, we're going to have room reverbs, we'll have convolution style reverbs, we'll have algorithmic reverbs. So I'll try to explain a little bit about each one, but just know for Abbey Roads, obviously this is a chamber plugin. I like using chambers for things like strings, maybe some different synths, maybe background vocals, but a chamber is not normally my go-to style for reverb. And so when I'm kind of ranking any chamber reverb, it's just naturally not going to sit as high as something like a plate or a spring or an algorithmic reverb where you can kind of do a lot of different stuff. So for Abbey Road Chambers, I'm going to put it in B. I think it is a great version of a chamber reverb, but since a chamber is not really my go-to and it's pretty limited as to what it does, that's where I'm going to put it. It's still a great sounding chamber. It's just not something that I reach for in every single mix. But if you want a chamber, try it out. The next one that we're going to dive into is Clear Mountains Spaces. This is by Apogee. This plugin is really cool. I like a lot of the Apogee plugins because I really like the GUI and the workspace. But this one, it does something really, really well. I really love the sound of the Apogee Studio button, and I love the sound of the Mix This button. I pop this one on piano a lot. I pop this one on drums a lot, especially like overheads and rooms. But again, this is not one that I'm always going for my vocals. It's not one that I'm always reaching for my guitars. So while this one sounds really, really great, and I do like that it has built-in EQ, that's a big feature that I'm constantly looking for in a reverb plugin. This is probably also a B. I think it sounds wonderful. I think the GUI is great. It's just like a really specific sound, and if something's not, ultra versatile, it's going to be hard to get on these top 2 tiers. The next one that I want to talk about is the Lexicon 224. This is arguably one of the most famous reverbs of all time. This is a UAD version of the classic hardware. You're going to hear these in pretty much every major studio. These are amazing for snare reverbs. They're amazing for kind of like a hall or a plate style vocal reverb. I do like that this one has a lot more flexibility than the first two. This is one that you could use on pretty much any source, and all of the UAD stuff, as we know, normally sounds fantastic. Their 224 is one of my favorite versions of the 224 that I have, so that does bring this one to an A. The only reason that this is not going to go S is because I find that even while there are things like the treble decay and you can kind of adjust the mid and the bass, you can't get as nitty-gritty with the EQ as I typically like to in a reverb. But it's kind of modeled after the hardware that wasn't on the original version. That's just what keeps it from going to S. But if you don't have a 224 style reverb, I think Arturia has one. I think UAD has one. I'm sure there are free versions. Every person should have a 224 style reverb because it is so versatile and it's such an iconic sound. The next one that we're going to talk about is Lustrous Plates. This is by Liquid Sonics. I will go ahead and give you a spoiler. Liquid Sonics makes, in my opinion, the best sounding reverbs out of any that I've ever tried. We're going to talk about this one, and we'll talk about Seventh Heaven in just a little while. If you are a plate fan, I think that this is the best sounding plate. I do prefer it to the Abbey Road plates that we're going to talk about in a minute. I do prefer it to the plate and vintage verb. This, to me, if I know that I want a plate reverb, I love it. I love the chrome plate. I love the silver plate. I love the gold plate. I love that you can kind of dampen the time on this one. And the EQ is a little bit more in depth, which, as I was saying before, is something that I really prefer in a reverb plugin. Mix all of those features in with the fact that Liquid Sonics just makes insanely, good sounding plugins. They do use a little bit more CPU. They can kind of be a computer hog. But if you have the CPU to spare, and if you're really going for a good plate, especially for something like a vocal, especially for something like if you want to plate on a snare, if you want to plate on, like a violin, this is going to be my go-to. I'm putting this in A. The only reason it's not going in S is because since it is just a plate reverb, it is pretty limited as to what it can do. The next one that I want to talk about is actually a stock reverb in Cubase. This one is called Revelation. It was probably the first reverb that I ever seriously started to use. This one is more kind of like that convolution-based reverb where they have different models in here. You can kind of, get in and you can start blending things like the pre-delay and the dampening, and you can do some EQ moves in here. It's not my favorite sounding reverb, and because it is stock, it's hard to fault it for that. If you're not in Cubase, this is not something that I think that you're like really, really, really going to miss. But if you are in Cubase, I suggest trying this before you go buy a million other, third-party reverbs, because reverbs can get really expensive. For this one, I'm going to pop it in C. It's not something that I would miss if it wasn't on my computer, but if you're just getting started, I think that for a stock plugin, it does sound really, really great. The next one that we're going to talk about is Seventh Heaven. This is Liquid Sonic's version of the Bricassi BM7. There are so many different things that you can do with this. The picture that we have right here is actually just the standard version. It's their less expensive plugin. But if you really want to splurge and you want to get Seventh Heaven Pro, it is by far my favorite reverb plugin that I have ever used. And for that, I'm going to be lumping in Seventh Heaven Pro with this because I believe when you buy that one, you get the bundle that also includes this. This one is S tier. This one has halls, it has plates, it has rooms. If you get the Pro version, you can actually do tons of different EQs and filtering. You can do ducking and side chaining. You can do all kinds of like cool dispersion. If I'm going for a reverb, I am almost always going to reach for the Seventh Heaven first because I think it is so versatile, especially when you have Pro. And it just sounds unlike any other reverb plugins that I've ever tried. That's going to be my first S tier. Just know that I'm also lumping in the Pro version when this is going number one. The next one that we're going to talk about is the SP 2016 by Eventide. Eventide has kind of been a long time goat of any kind of time-based plugins. We know from all of their H delays, their H3000s. We know from their 910 harmonizers. Anything that is time-based, Eventide has tried and true. I think the 2016 is really no exception. It sounds really, really great. For me, the workflow is just not something that like I always dive straight into. I think because this is such a, vintage style GUI, very similar to like the 224, it's not something that I'm always reaching for. But I think that unlike the 224, this does a really, really good job of having extra EQ that you can kind of filter in and filter out. I also love that there's like kill buttons on this one. I feel like you can probably just get a little bit more nitty gritty with position. So maybe I'm going to move this one to A. It's not something that I reach for all the time, but when I want it, it sounds really, really great. The next one that we're going to talk about is Magma Springs. This is a spring reverb. I'm going to go ahead and put this one in B. I love a spring reverb. I think that this does a really, really good job. I really love the California and I really love the twang. I also like that you can kind of swap this between long and short. If I want a spring reverb and I don't want something that's going to be really fussy or I don't want to put a lot of effort into like really tweaking it, this one sounds pretty solid right off the bat. I think that it's a great reverb, especially if you have the Waves bundle. So I'm putting that one in B. It is only a spring reverb, so it's pretty limited, and it's not my favorite sonic spring reverb, so I'm going to set that in B. We'll get to one in just a second that I think is a little bit better sounding. The next one, this needs no introduction. This is Valhalla Vintage Verb. This is an S tier. This plugin is like $50. Basically everything that Valhalla DSP makes is insane and way, way, way underpriced. This one has so many different knobs. You can adjust width, you can adjust pre-delay, you can adjust your early and late reflections. There's chambers, there's holes, there's plates, there's non-linear reverbs. The presets are absolutely bananas. You have a 70s, an 80s, and a modern kind of color. I think that if you're going to get one reverb and you don't want to spend, close to $200 for Seventh Heaven, Vintage Verb is going to be the best reverb that you can get on the market, hands down. It's something that every producer has to have, in my opinion. The next one is Supermassive by Valhalla. I believe that this is a free plugin. At least it was at one point. This to me, I'm going to put as a B. I love using this for sound design. It can kind of do that Strymon, Big Sky, octave up thing that a lot of people really, really love. I use this all the time on guitars. I use it on synths. I think that it's a really, really, really good version of what I would consider more of like a sound design reverb. I'm not putting this on vocals a ton. I'm not putting this on drums a ton, but I put this on background layers and it can add so much texture. It kind of has a chorusy thing inside of it. I love it. It's great, especially if it's still free. Just go ahead and grab it. You don't have to think about it. The next one that we're going to talk about is Roomworks. This is also a stock plugin out of Cubase. For me, I like Roomworks a little bit less than Revelation. I'm going to go ahead and put this one in D. I don't think that it's bad. I just have a lot of other room reverbs that I grab immediately. With this being a stock plugin, if you just need a room reverb and you don't want to go spend, you know, $50 for a Valhalla room or whatever Perfect Room over here costs, I think it's fine. It doesn't sound the best to me. Sometimes I feel myself like finicking with all of the knobs just a bit too much. It's fine. None of the reverbs on this list, spoiler, are really bad. But this one is just, it's out of everything on this list, probably the one that I grabbed the least. But that kind of is a perfect transition into Perfect Room. This is by Denise Audio. This one I think is high B, if not low A. If I want like a room reverb, I think that this is a really cool modern version of that. You can get those really short, roomy, slappy sounds. But with this one having, you know, extra knobs for color, with this one having extra knobs for like pitch modulation, you have ducking, you have a width knob. You can really, really get nitty gritty with this, and with it having a parametric EQ up top. I find with rooms and smaller chambers, I'm typically trying to, you know, really dial in that EQ. I will say Perfect Room also has like, it's not just a small room reverb. You can do chambers, you can kind of do like a plate thing. I just really prefer it for the rooms. Maybe it was just kind of suggested in the name, but as soon as I downloaded this and tried it, that was kind of what I use it for. Really, really short length reverbs, things where I really want to play around with that pitch mod and that halo. This is really, really cool. It's kind of got everything that I need in a reverb plugin. The next one is Shimmerverb. This is by Eventide. This to me is very, very similar to Supermassive. This is also very similar to like a Strymon Big Sky. It sounds really, really great. It just does, you know, a very specific thing. You can kind of do your reverbs pitched up. You can do them pitched down. Shimmerverb is something that I do grab often, but with Supermassive being free, it's hard to rank it above that. And since it is such a specific sound, I might have to put that one in C. But if you have all the Eventide stuff and that comes in your bundle, I do think it sounds incredible. I think it is one of the best sounding shimmer reverbs, but Supermassive just does that for free. So it's hard to really rank it that high. The next one that we have is Reverb. This is by Waves. This is such an old reverb. I'm going to go ahead and say I don't love this one. Out of all the Waves reverbs, this is my least favorite. I do like that you can kind of mess around with the early reflections. You can kind of do some really cool sound design stuff, but I don't love the sound of this one. It's very whatever sounding. I would honestly rather use Revelation. I'm putting that one in D. All love to Waves, but for this one, it's not doing it for me. I think it's a bit dated. It's one that I probably wouldn't spend money on at this point. I just think there's so many other good ones on the market. The next one that we're going to talk about is Reverence. This is also a stock plugin in Cubase. I actually think that out of all the stock plugins in Cubase, this one sounds the best. It is a convolution style reverb, which means that it loads all of these impulse responses in, so they kind of sample real rooms. And you can kind of do something similar to what you would do in like a Bricasti, where you have all of these different like impulse responses, and you can just kind of pick, do you want like a sunset studio? Do you want like an east-west chamber? I think that out of all the stock stuff in Cubase reverb-wise, this is probably my favorite, but I'm still going to put it in C because there are just so many insane sounding reverbs. This is not my favorite sounding. I do think out of all the stock stuff, though, it is the most flexible. The next one that we're going to talk about is the Abbey Roads plate. I talked before about the Abbey Roads chamber. I use plates a bit more than chamber, and I do think this is a great sounding plate. If I'm not going for lustrous plates and I'm not going for Vintage Verb or the Seventh Heaven, this is probably the plate that I'm grabbing. I like using it for a bit smaller plates, things like, you know, maybe 1 second decay times. I think that this works really, really, really well for. I don't love the super drawn out like 2-3 second plates on this, but if you really like a plate reverb and you like something that does sound a lot more like a physical plate than something like Valhalla Vintage Verb or even Seventh Heaven, I think this is a great digital version of a physical plate. The next one that we're going to talk about is Verb Suite. This has made thousands of appearances on our channel. This is my most used reverb for a really, really, really long time. Somewhere along the lines, I just started realizing that I preferred the sound and the flexibility of Vintage Verb. And then when I got the Seventh Heaven Professional, Slate kind of partnered with Liquid Sonics for the BM7 expansion, which is what I normally used. I just found that with the Verb Suite, the settings are a bit limited. It sounds really good straight off the bat, but if you want to do a lot of tweaking, I figured it's not my favorite for that. And for that, I'll put it in B. I think everything sounds really, really great out of the box. That's a big reason that something like Reverence down here is a C. Verb Suite's kind of doing a very similar thing, but it sounds a lot better. I just miss some of the flexibility with things like parametric EQ. I don't love that you can't, you know, like do early reflections versus late reflections. And I know that that kind of fits for the style reverb that this is. But if I'm dialing in reverbs, I like to get kind of nitty gritty. That just doesn't have the options for me. The next one is the Reverb or R Reverb from Waves. This is kind of the opposite problem to something like Verb Suite, where I feel like there's just so many things happening on this. The GUI to me is a bit much to look at. You can easily get lost in this for 30 minutes just trying to dial in a reverb. And I don't love the sound of it. I think that it is a much, much, much better version than the Reverb. But to me, I'm putting this in a C. It's not something that I grab often. If I need a reverb where I really want to go crazy with like playing with early reflections and playing with, almost like negative pre-delays, you can get some really weird like ghosting effects in this, but it's not something that I find myself reaching for often with like a vocal or a guitar or a piano. It kind of sounds whatever, and the GUI is just kind of a headache for me, so it's going in C. The next one is the Pulsar Primavera. This is a spring reverb as well. So earlier when I talked about Magma Springs sounding really great but not being my favorite, the Pulsar Primavera is my favorite. I'm putting this in A. If I'm using a spring reverb, I think that this is the best version of that. It sounds great straight off the bat. It does have a knob to kind of adjust tension. You can kind of get a little bit more nitty-gritty with dialing it in than you can with the Magma Springs. And it just sounds so good. Everything that Pulsar makes this, and they have kind of like a space echo plugin, both insane. If I need a spring reverb, this is by far my first. I don't think that the Seventh Heaven or Vintage Verb really do a spring reverb, so if I want that, this is what I'm grabbing. The next one is Pro R2. This is by FabFilter. I'm going to go ahead and say that this is probably an S tier. If I have these three plugins, I can pretty much do any reverb sound that I want other than something like a really specialized spring. But this one has obviously such advanced EQing because it's basically got the EQ of something like Pro Q. But then you can just go really crazy with this. If I want like a super long washy reverb, this is one of my favorites to dial in because you can kind of get nitty gritty with the settings and you can give yourself something that feels long and it feels thick. You can add your character, you can do your gating, but you can easily control it with modules and brightness modules and distance modules and EQ, and you can do a decay rate EQ. This is one that if I know exactly the reverb sound in my head that I want to go for and I'm just going to dial that in, I'm probably going to reach for this. So if I don't want something that's super, convolution style, and I don't want something that's super kind of algorithmic, I'm probably just going to go for this and just create something from scratch. Pro R2 is fantastic, super easy to work. It's probably the most self-explanatory, and if you're a visual learner, I think the GUI might be my favorite out of all of these. The next one is Little Plate. I can't remember if this is $50 or if this was like a free offer that I got. To me, it's good. I mean, it's kind of whatever as a plate reverb. I would much rather go for lustrous plates. I would much rather go for the Abbey Road plates, or I'd much rather go for the plates in Seventh Heaven or Vintage Verb. I'm probably putting this in C. It's just not a plate that like instantly sounds amazing to my ear, and it's super limited with settings. It's basically set it and forget it. So for me, it's not something that I grab very often at all. I'm popping it in C. Soundtoys makes incredible plugins, but out of all of their plugins, this is one that I probably use the least. The next that we have is the Flamingo Verb. This is by Safari Pedals. This is a great plugin. I love their GUI style with it being guitar pedal based, and I love that this one has some color in it. So if I want reverb that I really want to drive, I really want to have some character to, I think that this is a great version. I would put this probably right in the middle of the B pack. It definitely has a sound that a lot of the other reverbs on this list don't have. So if I want that specific sound, it does something, and it does it really, really well. If you haven't checked out Safari Pedals, they make great plugins, and they're all kind of a little left of center. They're not something that you could just easily, replicate. The next one is Mangled Verb. This is also by Eventide. Mangled Verb is so fun for when I want to do like sound design. If I want to do something that has a bit of saturation, if I want to do something that has a bit of, depth and texture, I'll use Mangled Verb on all kinds of things for sound design. It's not something that I'm ever grabbing for like space or depth. But for that reason, I'm going to put it in, it's not super versatile, so I almost want to put it in C, but it does sound great, so I almost want to put it in B. I might put it at the very bottom of B, but it's still an amazing plugin. The next one that we have is TrueVerb by Waves. This is, once again, just like kind of a dated reverb plugin. I don't love it. I think that out of everything that Waves does, their reverbs tend to be my least favorite. I just think that there are so many other amazing ones on the market, and these are so old and kind of traditional that I just don't reach for them often. So I'm sorry to say, but this one's also going in my D tier. I know a ton of like legends have used this on a ton of incredible mixes, but if I want something, it just doesn't have like a sound that immediately is inspiring to me. And for the settings, it's just something that is a little bit boring. If I want something this limited, I would rather just use like a 224 or the 2016 because it's a bit more flexible and you can kind of do the same thing with, you know, early reflections and stuff like that. I just don't grab TrueVerb a ton. It's a pretty dated reverb, and it's one that I think that you could skip. The one thing that I will say is when I use TrueVerb, it's really, really fun to kind of mute the direct and mute the reverb and use it as kind of an early reflections unit. But we're almost getting outside of a reverb at that point. That's really my only redeeming factor about that one. And then the last one is Black Hole. This is by Eventide. If I want something that's like a 30-second reverb and I just want that super washy, super ambient, pad-like reverb, Black Hole is my go-to. This is one that I'll just use for sound design all the time. I'll throw it on anything that I basically want to create a pad texture. I love Black Hole. Out of all of the Eventide stuff, it's probably the one that I use the most. But it is really, really limited. It's not nearly as flexible as the 2016. So I'm going to put that right in the middle of B tier. Again, all of these are super usable. I don't think that there's one that is like a complete waste of time or money. Out of all of them though, these would probably be the ones that I never really grab in a mix. C are things that I think sound fine, but they're just not something that I'm like instantly inspired by. B are things that I think do one thing and they do it pretty well. A are things that I think are either the best at what they do, like the Primavera Springs and the Abbey Road Plate, or there's something that's super versatile, like the 224, the 2016, and the Perfect Room. And then S tier, if you don't have all of these S tier ones, these are the ones that I wholeheartedly think that you should buy whenever you can save up some money. Pro R2, Vintage Verb, and Seventh Heaven Pro, incredible reverbs. But that's kind of my thoughts behind reverbs. If there are any that you thought that I missed and you really want my opinion on, let me know in the comments down below. I can always comment you back wherever I would rank something if it were in this tier list. But other than that, make sure that you leave a comment within the first 72 hours if you want to be entered to win a sample pack, preset pack, MIDI pack, or loop pack. If you want to support us, head over to our website, makepopmusic.com. We have tons of free content. We have tons of paid content. Super, super cool stuff over there. And then if you really want to support the channel, you can just like this video and subscribe to us. We do these videos every single week. But thanks for watching this one. I'll see you guys next week. Much love. Peace.